Farm4Profit podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit podcast.
All right, Dave, I don't know, having been here in California for only my third day, 3 days, how to dress for this weather, because yesterday I was cold, so I threw a long sleeve underneath my shirt, and I'm going to be sweating this afternoon because today is not much different than yesterday, but for some reason feels a lot warmer.
I think I got sunburnt yesterday, but I was frost on the pumpkin yesterday morning, I'll tell you that.
Oh, man, this is beautiful out here at the World Egg Expo. Excited to have 2 guests on today. It's also kind of exciting to host a podcast without Corey. As we get the double middle finger from him. So appreciate him sitting this one out so we can have a very great conversation. It's our pleasure to welcome Joel Ackernecht.
Morning.
Close?
That was good.
All right, look at that. And Robert Holtermann. That was easier.
You got it.
Awesome. Welcome to the podcast. Listeners, we're going to learn more about their operation and what it's like to manage a farm here in Central California. It's called Central. You call it the Valley.
Southern San Joaquin Valley, yeah.
There you go. I like this. We're going to get some perspective so that way you can take a look at what is working well for them, what might not have worked the best, and then bring that back to your farm, whether you are still in California or you're back here in the I-States raising corn and soybeans, and get some good perspective. But, Joel, let's start with you first. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your operation.
Joel Ackernecht, been working for in ag about 25 years. Family farm. So, I call it mid-sized family farm, which is, there's the large corporate farms in California. The small family farm is pretty much gone by the wayside just because of competition, economics, contrition, all that stuff. The majority of where we've gone in our cropping pattern is shifted away from row crops. We started out back in the late 90s, early 2000s, cotton, hay, sugar beets, onions, carrots, transitioning into the permanent crops, the higher valued almonds, pistachios. We have some wine grapes, we have some citrus. Cropping patterns have changed a lot, especially in California in general was just economics. I think the cost of doing business, when you're farming a commoditized crop like sugar beets, like cotton, when you're competing with foreign governments, you're competing with large swaths of the South, and it just kind of pushed us out of those. When we're having to irrigate and pay for water on cotton, and your yields are slightly better than they are in somebody in the South, and they have free water, and your costs of inputs are a lot cheaper. So we had to look for other opportunities. Climatologically, almonds are really well designed for the San Joaquin Valley, Mediterranean climate, the chilling hours in the winter, the heat of the summer, dry conditions, because they're pretty susceptible to diseases. We've just changed. We've gotten, over the years, we've had to become more efficient in fertility, irrigation, mechanization. That's where, we're all obviously we'll get into more of the equipment side of things, but that's kind of the shift that we've had to do. Unfortunately, in the last 5 years or so, the almond price has been depressed in the last 5 years. It's been, the almond market exploded. There was a lot of foreign and domestic investments into it. People looking for my theory is 2008, the housing market took a dump. There was a bunch of people that had a bunch of money, and there was no money in real estate. There was no money in the stock market. There was no money in commercial investment. But in ag, you could buy this piece of property for, $3,000-4,000 an acre. You plant trees on it, all of a sudden it has a value of $15,000 to $20,000 an acre. So a lot of these companies built their balance sheets off of planting almonds and pistachios and permanent crops. So
I think I heard, Joel, 7 different crops that your family farm?
Currently we have, our permanents are almonds. We have wine grapes, citrus, like the easy peel oranges. We farm with Sunkist, so it's that easy peel mandarin. Wow. And then we have this year we have carrots and potatoes. We've grown in the last couple of years onions and garlic and some barley. So, pretty diversified.
Yeah.
But, over the years, I couldn't even count the number of crops we've grown.
And tell me, you're tied to agriculture. Did your family do it before? Did you go to school for it? Do you have business degree?
None of the above.
None of the above?
So,
okay.
I'm a Pepperdine University graduate with a biochemistry major. I met my now ex-wife. She was a student there also.
Okay.
My ex-father-in-law had 2 daughters. Neither one of them were in ag, and I was looking for something to do with my life. I have a friend that I grew up in Santa Cruz by the beach, and I have a friend up there that they farm in the Watsonville, Castroville, Salinas Valley area. So I wasn't on the farm, but I was aware of it. So came back and started out. My ex-father-in-law jokes that I was the Mexican assistant when I started. I didn't know. I mean, I got a college degree, but didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
I've done everything on the farm. You know, there's some things I'm good at. There's some things I'm not. But I've done it all through the years. And so basically since 1998, I've been on the farm every day.
Okay.
Wow. That's good. But we're going to come back to you. Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit about your operation?
Absolutely. My name is Robert Holtermann, fourth generation farmer. We are exclusively almonds at this point. My grandfather, he grew pretty much every crop under the sun going back. He planted his first almonds in the 1970s. And then over time, we just transitioned to more and more almonds. Some of the things Joel mentioned, just the input costs and going to those to a more high value crop. So we made that transition. So now I work with my dad. Thank you. Work with my dad and my brother on the farm, and it's great. It comes with its share of challenges, great opportunities. I enjoy it. We kind of took the approach of going all almonds as we talk about the inputs and specifically equipment. We haven't looked outside for other crops on a small scale, just because we have all the equipment for almonds. We're already set up, and it's such a huge capital investment to buy, pistachio harvesters, and there are some things that are overlap for, orchard tractors, mowers, things like that. But for the specialty there's a lot of nuances in equipment, so we're already geared for almonds.
And Tanner, right before we, of course, doing this podcast, we were walking the grounds here at World Egg Expo, and we just, for the first time, I just saw like a pistachio harvesting machine, and it looks expensive. Like lots of.
The guy was so nice to tell us. I get these folks are here to sell machinery, but we were just curious, and he literally walked us through the steps of like. This was used for this,
here, this park's here.
Then it loads up in here, and you haul it back to the site here. It goes up into a load there. You had to have an entire operation. But then again, you think about corn and soybeans, you still got to have your planter.
Correct.
And then you got to have your combine, you got to have your grain cart, you got to have your
tillage, and So we're so Midwestern based, but we get the opportunity, the pleasure to meet and see all kinds of things. And agriculture is so much bigger than just corn and soybeans. Where we're in the I states and everything is corn and soybeans. You guys, 7 different crops. I mean, nobody does 7 different crops where we're at. So that's
very
crazy.
Few.
But I assume that with machinery, I was like, how do you do that? Because there's so many different specialty machineries we've seen here that I'm thinking, man, how do they manage just the equipment bill on all this? So
right. Well, and I think that as far as equipment goes, the equipment it is a huge capital investment. A lot of pieces of equipment are several $100,000. But on the other side too, when you look at labor costs and labor challenges we have in California, the taxes, the regulations, issues in terms of heat illness, overtime. California is heavily taxed, heavily regulated, and so the more we can mechanize, the more we can become efficient on the equipment side and reduce the amount of labor, the more efficient we can be on the farm by and large.
That's interesting because we from Iowa, and we've said this a lot of times off the mic, we feel that the overtaxed, overregulated is what's also pushing into agriculture throughout the rest of the country. We feel like it's stemming from California.
Oh yeah, California does everything better, whether it's the weather or the regulation, taxes, the overgovernment, the overreaching government. Sure. My boss did something for a presentation where he looked at the number of agencies that have some sort of regulatory umbrella over us, and there's like 25 different ones, and a lot of times they're even conflicting within their own. You have air, and you have air districts, and then you have CARB, and you have the state water board, and all these other governmental agencies that have a say in how you do your business. And most of the time when I say say, I mean there's some sort of fee associated with what, you're allowed to do this if you pay a fee. If you don't do this, then you're going to pay a penalty type of thing. So, it's challenging for sure. And that's like Robert mentioned, just we've gotten to where the diversification has almost become more of a hindrance because of you have expensive almond harvest equipment. You have a shaker, a sweeper, a harvest machine or conditioner, harvest machine, bank out, reservoir, shuttle, elevator. This 5-step process to get the almonds from the tree to the truck. And if you only have a few hundred acres of it, it doesn't really pencil to spend $1 million on this equipment just to have a few acres. So you have to and then you have equipment for, for us, for garlic, you have equipment for grapes, you have equipment for citrus. In this day and age, when a tractor is $125,000 or a sweeper is $65,000 or $70,000 or a shaker is $150,000, you can't go out and do this unless you have larger scale. And that's been the difficulty in originally it was don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now it's like you can only afford to put all your eggs in one basket because of labor, water, efficiencies, equipment, all those things that have really made it challenging. And, the unfortunate part is if one of these commodity prices like almonds has taken this dip for the last 5 years, we all kind of pushed all of our chips in on almonds, and we're really struggling to see we need the almond price to be 50 cents a pound more than it is, but COVID hit, the port issue, the container debacle of 2020, 2021. We've had all kinds of issues that have helped keep the price depressed for a long time, that we're just now kind of in survival mode.
I have so many questions.
I know.
How much time you got?
We got all afternoon. If you want to jump otherwise I can kind of go follow some direction.
I was just going to take us the management route because there's so many things that most people. So first off, when the rest of the world thinks of California, they think of beach bum. They don't think of agriculture, or I didn't anyways. And that's even
Hollywood stars.
Being in agriculture, you see L.A. and Coronado Island and San Francisco and tech. That's kind of what you think. And there is so much agriculture in the middle part here that I'm seeing that you guys are all involved in, family-wise. It's awesome. But where we're at, there's a couple of cash crops that everybody does. Maybe I say easier to manage. As I'm looking at you guys, hearing what you're doing, it seems so much bigger swath, if you will, to manage different crops, different maybe political things. Not that there's not in the Midwest, but Brian or Robert, start with you. Yours is probably less because you said what, third generation, fourth generation?
Fourth generation.
So you got father and brother in the business, is what I heard. So maybe I don't know if you're to the management decision where you're managing the farm, making all the decisions. What equipment do we buy? Do we put all our eggs in one basket, or is Dad still doing that?
We actually, all three of us work together. We're very fortunate the way we're set up. My brother and I, we both went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He went the ag business route, and he's a PCA, so he's a pest control advisor. He really went that direction. I went the business route. My background's actually in accounting, so I take care of my primary role is the business operations. His primary role is the day-to-day farming. But we work together in terms of that. My dad's still heavily involved, but he lets us do the areas we specialize in. But we always come back and work together. So in terms of looking at equipment, what equipment do we need? We look at it, okay, based on, I'll look number of hours, how many hours, and what we can do on a per acre basis with a piece of equipment. How many acres are we going to have? Do we need more? Do we need less? Because then you start getting into, do we want to push our equipment that we have and pay the overtime, or do we want to get additional equipment to reduce the amount of overtime and the amount of labor costs?
Sounds like he needs John Deere Operations Center and link them all together, and they can put all that together.
I'm sure he does use it.
So how much your decision making, your family business, and every time I sell farmland all across the Midwest, and there's more emotion in farmland because it's all family based. We're a heritage, we're a century farm. So you're in the family side of it. It sounds like you made your own way in it. You maybe were born into it a little bit more.
Right.
How much of that decision is emotional versus business? Now if you're a bean counter, maybe it's more. If you're more on the CPA side, it might be less emotional. But does that get involved in your business?
I would say by and large, no. When it comes to making decisions, we always try to take a step back and bring multiple sides to it. What makes sense financially? What makes sense practically on the farming side? So in terms of emotion for decision making, it's by and large it's what's practical. And we've really, the way times have changed in farming. We really look for efficiencies. We look for what's practical, and really embracing technology. Like on the irrigation side, over the last several years, we use WiseCon. So we've gone to a lot of pump automation. The reason we've done that by automating our pumps from our phone, from anywhere, from here, I could start up my well, I could turn off my well. So it saves on labor, sending employees around to do those sorts of jobs. So you're saving on labor, you're saving on fuel. We've gotten to a point where we're more efficient with our water, with our fertilizer, so we can give shots of water to our almonds every day. But really those efficiencies, and then not to mention in terms of cost. I know Joel was talking about inputs earlier. So we're in PG&E. So for our electricity, we get our electricity from PG&E. The beginning of the year, I think, would they go up, Joel?
17%.
19% at the beginning
after
of the year.
25% last year, after 20% the year before.
Wow.
I mean, we have, like I said, California does best. PG&E has the highest power rates in the country.
I saw the fuel coming in, and it's double what it is.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the challenge. Is
almost $5 a gallon out here.
When you have a well where you're pumping water from 400 feet, you have to get that water out of the ground one way or another, and PG&E doesn't care. And part of the problem is, they've been looking towards ag as being some sort of savior for their economic issues that they have. I mean, they had the wildfire issue that, debate it all you want, but PG&E is the one that ends up having to pay the fines for the ramifications of wildfires. Well, what does PG&E do? They're not going to pay it. They're going to go straight to the ratepayers and say, well, if you look at your PG&E bill, there's like 5 wildfire funds that are tacked onto your power bill that are paying the fines from the PUC that we now as ratepayers are paying, so that we are both on a water district board together where we have 100 electric wells. And our PG&E bill in 2022 was like $19 million. 2023 was a wet year where we didn't have to pump a lot of water. It was like $800,000. So the fluctuations in what we're paying, and that's where California is so dependent on, well, especially the Valley, is snow in the Sierra Nevadas, melting snow into the reservoirs. It gets distributed throughout the summer for irrigation purposes. Dry years, drought years, we're pumping groundwater, which then exponentially increases your cost because an almond takes 4 acre-feet of water per acre. So if you're pumping water at $250 an acre-foot, you're paying $1,000 a year for water. Whereas if you're getting it from the water district at $100 an acre-foot, you're paying $400 a year. You're saving $600 a year just based on natural water. So we are really, we're not a pray for rain type of state like the Midwest is, and where you guys live and die by, the timing of the rain. We need winter snow. Obviously 2023 was outstanding, one of the best on record, which honestly saved farmers a lot of money.
Right.
Because this, like you talked about the automation of the pumps, I'll echo there's no emotion left in ag. I mean, we can't be emotional anymore. Yes, there's the farming history. Yes, there's the family history, but the ones that made emotional decisions don't exist anymore.
Well, if you're talking millions, you're talking treat it like a business.
100%. I mean, and that's
time.
what I say, like the mid-sized family farm, we've had to become corporate in the sense of you have to have somebody that understands finance, economics, trends, paying attention to technology, markets. I mean, all these things where you can't just be the hayseed, walking around with your overalls. I'm going to go out and drive the tractor today. I mean, we're business people. We're in business management 100%. We can't just have, I really like what that tractor looks like and I think it can help me. You have to know exactly what it's going to do for you because these things they're a lot of money. I mean,
So do you think it was different for you, Joel, as starting, where maybe he was in a family business, and it sounds like you started a little bit more from scratch? The way you manage your farm, do you think it differs from the way that a multi-generational farm does?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm kind of in a family farm in a sense. My boss, he's a third-generation farmer. So our family business has been around. I mean, WB Camp and Son was the original farming. They came out from South Carolina in World War II because of the pink bollworm had decimated cotton in the southeast. They came to Shafter, California, planted cotton here. So my boss's family's been here for generations. And then I'm more of a I'm a family farmer in the sense, just not by blood.
Gotcha.
So and that's kind of how this is. Has our management decisions are, we're trying to keep this thing surviving.
Right.
Yeah, we've learned a lot since we've been out here. When you talk about water quality and water management, in the Midwest, we do live and die by the rains. Especially in Iowa, there's very little irrigation, but we get a lot of flack for nutrient runoff as the water falls and makes its way to streams, which turn to rivers, and ultimately, apparently, is our fault when there's water quality issues or those perceived. So it is fascinating to see what the perspective is, and I want to kind of get and bring things into perspective. So I would say an average, Midwest farm is going to be somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 acres.
Yep.
There's going to be those that are less, those that are farming much more, but a corn and soybean operation in Iowa probably going to cover that. When you look at an almond farm here in California, how many acres are we talking?
It all depends. I think last I heard there were almonds. I think there were what, Joel, like between 7,000 and 8,000 growers. The average, most growers are under 100 acres. If you look statewide, down where we farm though, most of the farms are of your larger scale. We have more corporate farming down in Kern County at the southern end of the valley. So you'll see anywhere. I mean, you still see some 40-acre farms down our way, but a lot of the mid-size are, 500 to
probably 500,000, a couple thousand.
Yeah.
40 acres, they can't afford $1 million harvester.
No.
No
that's
way.
that's where they hire out. That's where they're not going to buy a harvester. They're going to hire a custom
a
harvester.
guy to come in for $200 an acre to do it for him. And that's kind of the other thing too is where in the Midwest, you just drive until you hit the fence line and turn around and come back. The irrigation distribution is a big limiting factor, too, for us of where your water source is. These irrigation systems, we've gone a lot to either micro sprinkler or double line drip, which is, where you're basically concentrating the irrigation on that tree row. So you're not going to have like a 2-mile run of irrigation, and because just from an efficiency standpoint, you lose that distribution uniformity. So, there may be 1,000-acre almond farm, they're not necessarily contiguous, so we have several thousand acres, but we have 400 acres here, we got stuff south of Arvin, we got stuff north of Bakersfield. We're patchwork, but in total we're this amount. And I think the same for Robert, where it's not 500 acres all contiguous. And that's, I think, originally down where we are, there was a lot of the homestead type of farms that were 60, 80, 160 acres that then have been kind of absorbed throughout the years by these larger corporate
when
entities.
we talk about the Midwest, the majority of our operators farm somewhat 30 to 40 miles from tip to tip. If you're your furthest south farm, your furthest north farm, your acreage might be in the middle of it or somewhere amongst it, but from outskirt to outskirt is 30 to 40 miles.
Drive the equipment any farther than that.
So. How far apart, when you're talking about you're not going to be contiguous, how far apart would you say an almond grower is? Are you guys counties apart, a couple miles apart?
It could be. It's all depending on the operation. I mean, there's like wonderful orchards is from Sacramento to the Grapevine. So, whereas for us, I'd say we're like 40 to 50 miles tip to tip. The problem is anymore, moving equipment around with the volume of traffic that we have, the liabilities, all these things that we had an incident probably like 8 or 9 years ago with a drunk driver clipped one of our tractors. So it's your exposure is so much greater the further apart you are. But a lot of times it's you're basically a lot of times picking your water district that you farm in. Because that's the one thing in California is the land values in the last 10 years have really taken a split between, I'll call them the haves and the have-nots, where you have two sources of water with a water district and groundwater, and the ones with no surface water supply. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014 has also really affected the landscape of water availability and land values.
So I'm going to come back to land values and water for a second. But how many people do you think it takes? For us, 4,000 acres. Your in-laws, Corey, etc. 1 or 2 people. How many people do you think it takes to run an almond?
Well, just to state that, you're going to have a lot of seasonal help.
Seasonal help, yep.
Spring tillage work, planting, harvest, trucking, getting.
But we're mechanized at 60-foot spreads.
Yeah, we can. Correct. If you wanted to, you can man a spraying operation with 2 guys and run all summer and cover all your acres and not have much of an issue. But there are different times of the year we need more people. But yeah, so on your operation, how many employees do you guys work with?
We and I think most people, every operation does it a little differently. Some use strictly farm labor contractors. Some have their own employees, and some have a combination.
Oh, okay.
We do a combination of employees and
contractors
and contract labor. Basically from into harvest, so October time frame up through now, it tends to be a little bit slower on the farm.
Okay.
We're going to start getting into a point where there's a lot of irrigation, fertilizer, sprays, from now all the way up until we start harvest, which is typically the first part of August, end of July, first part of August. So now's our busy season, but it's the same thing where you keep your main crew on, and you might need extra help during those times of the year, bringing extra guys on.
Is it 20 guys, 80 guys, something like that, or can you do it with a handful of people?
For us during harvest, we're up probably closer to 20 employees.
Okay.
But with all the equipment, because Joel just mentioned, if you have a harvest set up, you have just for one shaker. So you have a shaker, a sweeper, a conditioner, a pickup machine, shuttle guy, a guy on the elevator. Just for one harvest setup, you're at 6. So then as you start adding acreage, if you add a second shaker and a second sweeper or a third shaker, so that's where you start growing it. So it kind of all depends.
Didn't that guy tell us over there on the pistachios that he had 6 different teams going at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the pistachio window is a lot smaller for harvest.
It is a smaller window.
It's usually like 6 weeks most. It's around like maybe the week before Labor Day to the 1st of October. Like their window is much smaller.
So they
have to get in and out. And the problem is the pistachio harvest it's a one-shot deal, but it's really slow. Because you're going through, you have those catch frames. It's going to, you pull up next to it. The guy's got to pull up next to it. It's got to shake. So it's a really slow process. Sometimes they shake them twice. Sometimes they shake them 3 times. But, whereas for us with the almonds, you're shaking it, you're letting it dry. You're sweeping it, and then you're coming behind and conditioning because the moisture has to be right on the hulls and shells before you can take them to the processor. So ours, obviously, it's dependent on when the varieties are ready on the tree, but it's not the urgency of having to get it all off, because we have multiple varieties that harvest at different timings. We started, end of July, early August with certain varieties when there's other varieties aren't ready until mid-September. So it spreads our harvest out, but it still is the people. We're probably, I got about 20 year round, and then we ramp up with crews for pruning or for extra help during irrigation. We use a contract sprayer to come in and do all of our air blast spraying on the trees. We do our own herbicide work. But
do they use a gust unit?
They do. There's some Gus. There's some still engine driven or PTO driven.
Sure.
The Gus is an interesting. We use Sunrise sprayers. They got I think they have either 6 or 8 Gus units.
Wow.
They're interesting to watch. It's definitely. The technology and that stuff is incredible. There's still a lot of kinks and efficiencies to be worked out that the more you get and the further the moving them, I think, is the hardest part.
Right.
And then getting them staged and set up. But if you can, we've talked about just the cost of labor. Minimum wage is $16 an hour now.
Yep.
And he talked about the overtime when you're looking at when we had in 2017 when the wage order started changing, we were paying $10 an hour, but we had 60-hour work weeks. By 2021, where it's $15 an hour with the 40-hour work week. So if you do the math, it's $600 gross either way. So in essence, the government of California decided we're going to pay you people more money, but we're going to cut your hours. So over the course of 5 years, their gross pay was exactly the same. But then they just assumed that ag farmers, we're going to go, oh, we're just going to pay you overtime. We're going to still work 60 hours a week. I'm sorry, but when you have a CPA and somebody who also knows a little bit of math, when you're paying time and a half at $15 an hour, it's $22.50. When you're paying overtime at $10 an hour, it's $15. So in essence, the government expected us to pay all these ag workers. Now all of a sudden $7.50 an hour more for overtime, plus you have all of your fixed costs of workers' comp. We pay our labor contractors somewhere between 32 to 37% based on that's their percentage of what they're paying in the mandated health insurance and the workers' comp and payroll tax and everything else. So you're talking $22.50 plus 35%.
Yeah.
So we're not going to pay these guys overtime to go out and irrigate
for 30-some bucks
for $30 an hour. So that's where we've had to become more efficient using technology, the pump shutoffs, because I'm sorry, we're irrigating for 24 hours. I'm not going to pay a guy 8 hours and have 3 irrigators to come out and cover a 24-hour cycle, because we can't run these things just 8 hours and shut them off. Especially when it's 100. And you guys need to come back in July. The weather here is great. In July it's like 110.
Okay.
It's dry. It's a dry heat though.
It's a dry heat.
Very dry.
I was told we got to come back and go to Ventura County because Ventura County never gets too hot.
That was Santa Cruz for me. I grew up in Santa Cruz. It was 70 degrees 360 days of the year and 50 degrees for 5 days, and
there you go.
80 for the others. But here it's you can guarantee it by the 1st of June. If it's under 100, you're lucky.
So I want to get a farm management tip into the profit side of this episode around labor and keeping and getting good help. What have you guys had success with on getting those workers to return? If it's seasonal, you'd like to have someone with experience come back again next fall or next harvest, whatever it is. Or for your year-round help, what's worked to keep the good people around?
I think treat them right. You treat them right. You keep your word. If you say, hey, we'll pay you this or that, you do it. And really just, they're helping us complete our harvest. All of the people we've had, by and large, have been great. We have a great crew full time. I think that's the big thing is just, I'm always thankful for everything they do. I thank them every day. Hey, great day, like during harvest. Hey, we had a great day today. Good job. Thank you. I think that's the biggest thing is just treat them right.
Yeah,
like
make them feel appreciated.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting part, right? Because treat them right is a very broad term.
Is there?
But it's how would you want to be treated?
Right.
Well, I think also there's a big focus on financial rewards too. I mean, I think that one of the things that's a little bothersome for me is how the way the government has said you're worth more money. Like, because to me, I want to give a guy a reward for doing a good job.
Yeah.
The government has dictated over the past 7 years that you are worth $1 more an hour this year than last, just because it's taken a little bit of the discretionary raise away from us as managers to say, hey, I want to give you a bonus at the end of the year because you've gone above and beyond. You show up, you do those sorts of things, because we've kind of changed the mindset of, hey, it's a pat on the back's nice, but they want something, because everything's gotten more expensive too. I mean, you go to McDonald's and a Big Mac is $10. Well, our guys, they're all here because the financial reward for them is better than it was where they came from.
Yep.
But at the same time, they also got to survive while they're here. And so a financial incentive is a big part of it, not only the appreciation.
Is there any ways to get around the not to loophole the government oversight, but in the Midwest, I see guys buy farms from me, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do with the house? Oh, that's for a hired hand. We're going to rent it out. Well, what about that pickup? I'm going to downgrade. I'm going to give them that pickup, and they're going to use that as a shop truck, and they get to use it all the time. Is that something that happens in California as well? Yeah. Are you guys incentivizing non-monetary with assets?
Yeah,
accessories?
we have 3 ranch houses that I have guys living in, 4 actually, that, it's like I put my supervisors in there. So they're on the ranch, they know they're appreciated. It's one of those that they're accessible now too, because that's the other thing with the constriction of the 40-hour work week. I'm sorry, we're a 7-day-a-week operation. And how do you cover 7 days a week with 40 hours? It's impossible. So, we've shifted our supervisors into kind of a salary type role where they're making more money, but then the expectation of, hey, we're giving you this housing. You have a vehicle that you have access to that's company owned to help incentivize their opportunities and they've that appreciation too of, hey, here's what you're getting. I have expectations of, if I call on a Sunday because the alarm's going off, I want you to go check it out, type of thing. And I got great. Our supervisors are truly, they're givers. They understand they're part of a family, and that's kind of the family business that he has and that we have. You treat your employees like family. And you and I say this every year. Look, guys, I get that we're not always going to be friends. We're not always going to get along, but ultimately we're family, and we can't do this without you, and you can't do this without us, essentially. Yep. So, just building that camaraderie, letting them feel appreciated, and that family atmosphere.
So we've got the opportunity to interview people from cranberries to everything, to almonds to corn and beans, and guys from Australia to Maine to California to Iowa listen to the podcast. For the people that are like me and didn't know anything about almond harvest or almond growing almonds, period, what's the coolest thing and what's the worst thing about being an almond farmer?
I think the coolest thing, and if you go up and down the state, if you stay a little longer, you're already seeing it, but bloom. It's incredible. Bees come in from all over the country.
Really?
So we need bees for pollination. They come in, and just the bloom's absolutely gorgeous. But to think our crop set is all done via bees. There are some self-pollinating varieties. They still need a small amount of bees, but I think that's the hands down. It's my favorite time of year.
Oh, I agree 100%. Because once the flowers are gone and the leaves are there, they're honestly kind of boring.
Okay. But that is bloom. If someone wanted to see it.
So basically the 10th of February-ish through about the 1st of March. Okay. Probably the last couple weeks of February. Obviously it depends on the wintertime chill. Sure. These trees need chill hours in the wintertime to essentially recuperate.
So you're right in bloom.
It's basically, I would say by the middle of next week, we're going to be pretty much at full bloom.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
So how long from when you plant an almond tree? Do you plant them by seed? Do you plant them by nut?
Tree.
So who starts the tree?
The nurseries do.
Okay.
There's a few. There's Duarte, Dave Wilson, Birchall, Sierra Gold. There's a handful.
And they start from the nut. The almond that I eat, if the nursery put that in the dirt,
no, there's a rootstock that they take graftings from the variety that you need. Then they graft that variety to the rootstock.
Yep.
There's different because almonds. If you grew it straight from the nut, there's a lot of disease susceptibility in the almond itself. So they have these hybrid rootstocks that are, more salt tolerant, more disease tolerant.
Peach almond. They do some plum almond hybrids, crosses. So.
Oh, I never would have thought it was a cross with another fruit. With a fruit, I thought it was just more an almond A and almond B. We put together and got almond C.
Is there different varieties that this one's more water tolerant, this one's more drought tolerant?
Of the rootstocks, yes.
Okay.
But of the nuts themselves, it's more of like the market. There's nonpareil is the major variety of almonds.
That would be what you buy in the store for snacking. If you're going to get a snacking nut, you're probably almost guaranteed to have a nonpareil variety.
But the other interesting thing is that they have to be cross-pollinated. So you can't plant an orchard that's 100% nonpareil. So you have to find compatibility between bloom timing. So if you're driving down the road, you might see one row looks like there's more flowers out than the row next to it. It's because basically every row is planted a different variety so that the bees go down that row, it picks up pollen from variety A, takes it to variety B. So, but back to your question about the ugliest thing, I'd say harvest dust.
I figured he'd come
harvest dust is probably the ugliest thing.
I agree on that too.
Because it's hot. That dust for whatever it's accumulation of everything that's been on the leaves all summer long.
You're shaking it off
and
violently.
You're shaking it on the ground. You're blowing all the leaves and sticks out, and it sticks to you, and it's like itchy, and it's just,
man, never thought about it.
Yeah, so
I was really hoping my Great Value or my Good and Gather.
They'll never tell you the variety on it.
Never tell me where it was coming from.
Because they don't want you to know. Because it might be a mission or something.
So do you guys store all your almonds in grain bins?
Hold on. Did we get the answer?
We got one answer, and he said he agrees.
I agree, but I would say, and that I guess would be the ugliest time. But we do all of our own spraying, tree spray and herbicide. So we air blast. So for me, where we do all of our own, I'm out there on the crew, and that's night work. So for me, I'm going to say that's the ugliest time.
Yeah.
But if I was digging for the almonds. I might have missed it. So from the nursery, and you plant the tree, how long until you get your first almond crop?
3 years.
Three
Oh
years.
About
boy.
3 years.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
got an investment there.
Well,
And
and
then
pistachios is 7. So I mean, in the permanent crop realm, almonds are kind of on the quicker side, I would say. But so by year 4, you're thinking, say, roughly 500 pounds an acre year 3, 1,500 year 4, and then essentially full production of 2,000 to 3,000 by
And
year
how
5.
long do they last? 20 years, 50 years?
Well, it depends on price. So if the price were what it was back in 2014, 2015, there's some of the pricing. I mean, it was $4+.
Yeah, $3.50, $4 a pound.
So when you have that kind of pricing, you can have low production and the numbers make sense all day. Right now, where our pricing is low, our pricing is now below $2 a pound on average.
Yep.
Where you have that, there's orchards that in the past, it could have been a 25-year-old block wasn't producing well, but they were making money on it. They kept it in. Now you're seeing even 18. I've seen even younger than that,
Yeah.
but you're seeing 18, 19-year-old blocks that have already peaked. And with the pricing low, they're being removed. So
Because it's economics. I mean,
Right.
if you're making 2,000 pounds at $4 and your input costs are 4,000 acres, sure, you're keeping them. But if you're making 2,000 pounds at $1.50 and
losing
your
money.
input costs are $4,000,
Yeah.
you're losing money. So I mean, ultimately, it comes down to economics. But yield typically decline. Like your money years are 5 to 15, post 15, and also depending on, I'll say how you're maintaining them, your water quality, your fertility program, your spray programs, all those things can extend life. But essentially by year 20, you're in the declining years, and the economics are dictating when they come out.
Right. So many different factors. I mean, we just had a windstorm, that storm we had come through last weekend, and growers with older blocks and tend to be a certain type, growers that were on Nimegard rootstock, the anchorage isn't as good. So you're seeing orchards that were probably going to be farmed several more years, lost a
blew
lot
over.
of trees.
Oh.
I mean, I know a grower who was going to farm his block, who's no longer going to farm it now this year. I mean, that storm switched it. I and driving by, I'm sure there's
there's so many.
There's a bunch that are that
We
way.
had sustained like 40-mile-an-hour winds a couple weekends ago,
Huh.
and the combination of the wind and the moisture. We had heavy rains. I mean, heavy for us.
Made the soil
Yeah, we had a
soft.
3/4 of an inch, and then heavy winds. Those older trees, they took a beating.
So your question, though, about storing. Can
Oh.
you store almonds, and how do you store almonds?
Yeah, actually, almonds have a great shelf life. So when they leave the field, so we load them in trucks. They go to what's a hull or sheller. So almonds have 3 parts. They have the outside, the hull, then the shell, and then the meats, what you have in front of you. So and we put everything to good use. So the hull actually is used for feed. So like cattle feed. You've got the shell that's used for animal bedding, things like that, and then the almond itself for eating. So you go to a hull or sheller. They take off at the hull or sheller. They take off the hull. Some product is actually left in the shell. So India and China are big buyers of in-shell. So they like it in the shell. We ship it in shell, and because they like to crack it out themselves. India has a huge labor force that they can do it with, and China, there's from what I've been told, there's a purity issue with it. Them being the first ones to open it. So from the hull or sheller, but some of it is meted out to what you see, and then it goes to a processing facility. So at the processing facility, that's where it's USDA comes in and does the grading for insect damage. They kick out the foreign material, so any sticks, any glass, metals, any of that. So basically, they get it to where it's a perfect product for eating. So what they do is it's bins. The bins are probably 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot. They're bagged. There's a bag inside. So from the hull or sheller, it goes in the bins to the processors, and then from the processors, sometimes they'll put them in 50-pound boxes. Sometimes they'll do these big, what are called super sacks. So they sell differently depending on who their customers are. But almonds do have a great shelf life. I mean, right now, there's a lot of commodities where you've got to get it into cold storage, and you have such a narrow window. Almonds, you actually have quite a range where. So we harvested last October. Last August through October. those almonds are still with processors. They're selling them through the course of the year, all the way up through the marketing year's July. And then sometimes even beyond then, some processors do. But I mean, it's a whole year cycle. They have a great shelf life.
Tanner, I didn't know it was called the meat of
Me
the deal.
either,
You guys
but I
need
like-
shirts that says "We have the meat."
That would be good.
Like you need
Where's
we
the
have
meat?
the beef. Where's the meat?
Yeah.
Where's the meat?
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
And then
I
almond.
liked it.
Yeah, meat or kernels are what those are called.
I didn't know that. I'm stealing that.
I do like that.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to hit before we wrap up this show, to hit on that topic of farm management, is when you are doing your analysis, your per acre analysis, or you're looking at it's time to expand, or we need to have another harvest crew, whatever it is, what are some key things that you look at? Because a lot of our listeners want to know, is it time to grow? Is it time to stay pat? You know, we have a lot of questions that come in via email, so I'm curious the perspective from almond growers. How do you decide?
I think it all comes down to, and every situation's different,
Yeah.
but I think it comes down to efficiencies. Like you guys noted on price of gas when you came in here, price of fuel. We farm, and you had asked earlier, we're probably 15 miles tip to tip. So if we have fertilizer that went out and we've got to wait a couple hours, we got to send somebody around to turn off pumps. That's a lot of fuel. That's wear and tear on a truck. That's labor. That's extra energy if we have to leave them run longer. So I think it comes down decision making on a lot of this. And like Joel said, a lot of it comes down to economics. Do you grow? Do you not grow? So if you're a grower and you have 500 acres and you have your own set of harvesting equipment, an almond grower, and you have all your own equipment, all your own tractors, you have spreaders, you have everything. Well, taking on another 160 acres probably isn't that bad. You might have to, buy another gator or, maybe an additional tractor. But if you already have the equipment, you're kind of already set up to incrementally grow without a huge capital investment other than, buying or leasing the land. So I think every situation's different.
I sell land. What is your land worth? 18,000 an acre? I think I heard, or is it more than that?
I think it depends.
Depends
I mean,
on
and
this.
I'll kind of follow up on Robert too. Is I think expansion, especially in California, it's location. I mean, there's the factor of proximity to what you already have.
Right.
I'm not going to go expand a piece of property that's in Fresno.
Yep.
So it's proximity to what I already have. And then also, the kind of California's become really dependent on the water situation. So I'm not going to be going out to expand in what we call the white lands, which is areas that don't have surface supplies. I'm going to go look for a piece of property that has a stable water supply. So that's what we've designated these non-districted areas as white lands. Where there's been these outside investment groups that have come up and bought up a lot of white lands, ground planted permanent crops on them with the anticipation that, hey, we're going to make this thing work. Screw the water situation. This is what we're going to do. But for us, where we're trying to figure out from a longevity and a sustainability, even though that's a word that I don't really like, for our own internal sustainability as a business. I mean, sustainability in ag is we're going to survive till next year.
Yep.
The way that we've gone to where we've sold that to the consumers as something we need to prove to you is idiotic. But for us to be sustainable as a business, we need to be able to survive until next year, and that involves making good decisions, expanding at the right time, looking at the future of the commodities that we're in. What's the long-term profitability? Because almonds is a long-term investment. You're making a commitment for the next 2.5 decades. We're not going to go out and just haphazardly go, oh, I like that piece of property because I like the guy, the sign on the, or where we have to make conscious, good business decisions on any
So
sort of
if you're
expansion.
a young guy and you want to start in almonds, because we have listeners all over that ask this question, like, how do I get into it? Do you go rent ground first? And I was going to ask you earlier, what is ground rent for if you're going to rent the farm next to you?
There's very little.
I would say you need to marry a farmer's daughter.
Okay.
Or
sounding familiar.
as a come out of college, go work for one of the large corporations.
Okay.
Nobody gets into farming anymore.
No.
I mean, that's an impossibility. Nobody has, because to go out and buy $20,000 an acre ground, you got to come up with 50% down. That's
Yeah.
you're not going. What college graduate has $10,000 an acre to go buy 80 acres. It's an impossibility in California to start.
Here's
farming.
$1 million to start. Now let's get the equipment.
Exactly.
Another $1 million, and let's
and I'm going to say the only caveat to that is if somebody who hasn't traditionally been in it works, like Joel said, for a larger farmer, farming company, wonderful, or there's so many out there. But if they work for a larger company, gain that experience, and then go out and start doing farm management.
Right, farm management is a way to kind of segue your way in. You're not going to own the ground, but you're going to be able to farm for...
So more corporate farm management, not managing your own operation.
Well, there's a lot of small farms around of older generation people that might have 160 that they're going to sell it, or they're going to have somebody manage it for them.
Okay, gotcha.
So you might be able to do that on the side, but in terms of like getting in,
it's hard.
Do you think there's going to be more of that? So we had first Korean War veteran era, then we went to baby boomers, and there was the largest generation ever, and now they're getting of age to where they're retiring, reducing, downsizing, etc. Are you guys seeing that there's going to be a large push of transitional wealth that's moving out there?
I think it's they're selling out to the larger farms, to the larger corporate entities.
Right. We've seen a huge consolidation.
Absolutely.
At least down our way, down in Kern County, you're 100% right on that, and it's been happening for some time. But that's the other thing going back. Joel touched on it earlier about the different regulatory agencies. Every year there's a new agency, a new program. I mean, coming up we're going to have to comply with CV salts. It's a nitrate and salinity management. So if you're a grower that's 160 acres and you're having to deal with EPA and CV salts and Sigma, and you go through the list, and if you have an employee and you just start going through the list, your efficiencies, if you're being pulled in so many different directions, your efficiencies.
So you guys have like
reduced.
a legal person on staff that their job is to just follow?
That's us. We got to figure this crap out.
Okay.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
How do you manage that?
You don't, and you basically you're trying your best to stay informed.
Okay.
The problem is that there's so many agencies that you're subject to.
Cal OSHA.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's mind-boggling the number of entities, and then so you just get caught in the sense of some. My joke is it's somebody that just graduated Cal Berkeley with an environmental studies degree that's out to save the world one ticket at a time.
Yep.
And so they're out writing tickets for the Air District or Cal OSHA or whatever, and it's like, you're pleading ignorance all the time because there's no way our businesses have the ability to keep up with all the regulations. They change all the time. They're new. They're interpreted differently by different inspectors. Yeah. You're trying your best. Sometimes you missed something.
Do you have an association for Almond Association that like keeps you all like we're stronger together? Like you guys knew each other as soon as you walked up. Like, hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Is there a group?
So there's the Almond Board of California. So they're a federal marketing order. So believe it's 3 cents a pound of
so it's
almonds.
like the Corn Growers Association.
Okay. Yeah,
soybean. You get your check off.
So it's a federal marketing order. So they do a lot of research. They do a lot of things like that. And then one of the other ones, I mean, there's the local farm bureaus, state farm bureau, things like that. They'll put out updates. And then we also have the Almond Alliance, and so they're kind of the Almond Alliance is a political and regulatory arm, so they stay up to date on
kind
different
of help
things.
lobby or do any of
right.
that. Okay.
Exactly. We're a federal marketing order where the Almond Board can't. The Almond Alliance can. So, and there's issues that pop up all the time. Endangered species, and the bumblefish.
I thought you were going to say bumblebee, and you said bumblefish.
Well,
that bumblebee
that
might be next.
It sounds like a dating app.
No, and that's
farmers only.
It's called Bumble.
I'm sorry.
Hey, you got your next great idea.
That's right.
But the monarch butterfly and so I think in California you look at it and the right to farm, the number of different government and regulatory agencies we're complying with, and we do work with different organizations. There's attorneys, there's training corporations. We do a lot of trainings with employees. We get annual updates, a long summary of, hey, these are the labor laws that changed. So there's a lot to it.
We in the Midwest follow what happens out here, like Prop 20 happened, and we're like, whoa, hold on, Prop 12, Proposition 12, like what's this? But Tanner, can you believe there is so much to know about almonds?
I'm excited. I can't believe we went an hour already. So I'm going to do my best to kind
Told you I could talk.
So I'm going to do my best to kind of to wrap up what we discussed today, because we did get some key points out of this. I love the format of this as a profit show. We're learning from those that farm outside of our area, but are going to have some key things to say about things that help our operation get better. But we like to ask all of our guests the same closing question. So be thinking about the answer to, when you have to go learn something new, in the past, how have you done that most effectively? We're going to put a summary show together with all these answers compiled for someone that is maybe afraid to go try or do something new or learn a task or learn about a new regulation. So think about, how best do you learn something new? How effectively have you done that? What I got here, Dave, coming out of our conversation around the farm management and where things can be done the same no matter what your crop is, things that are going to provide value to our audience. The first thing that I wrote down was, take a step back. You got to be able to eliminate emotion. You can't afford. Literally, I wrote, you can't afford to be emotional when you make your business decisions. That's something that all corporate boards do. And even if you're a family farm, quote unquote, you still need to be able to step back and take the emotion out of it. When managing people, keep in mind that if you treat them like family, if you treat them right, you will have a lot more longevity. Keep your word. So do what you say you're going to do. Pay what you say you're going to pay. Reward how you say you're going to reward.
That's irregardless of the business or the crop.
Correct. Absolutely. Potentially look at how you show your appreciation towards them, and maybe look at a salaried structure that provides additional benefits or bonuses, whether they're financial or through assets. When looking at expanding your operation, whether it's a business or a farm, focus on the economics. Focus on how efficient you can be if you expand. There may be ways that expanding increases efficiency, or there could be efficiencies that you've adopted that allow you to expand.
Well, and we've seen nothing but technology to talk about learning new stuff. Mercy.
But proximity is still always key.
Yep.
If it's in your backyard, probably something you consider a lot more than if it's 100 miles away.
Yep.
Or 30 miles away.
Well, and I think the other thing to piggyback on that, you might be willing to pay more for a piece of ground that fits into your operation better.
It's adjoining
exactly.
than 10 miles down the road.
Exactly.
Correct. And that's the same thing. You look at the resources that you have.
Yep.
If you had the full line of equipment, or if you've got access to water, all the resources are going to factor into whether this is the right time to expand. And make sure you stay informed with whatever law, regulation, things that might get in your way if you're looking at this new piece. And then lastly, I put down the experience that you can provide and gain by working with others. So if you're looking to expand and it's a different crop or it's a different area, go work for somebody. That might be your way in. We mentioned that when we were talking about how someone gets into farming, but it's the same way when you're looking at managing your operation. Maybe you need some perspective on working with somebody else or making a management observation. So those are the key points we pulled out of a really fun conversation.
You write down a whole lot. I wrote down one thing, one takeaway.
And Joel read it.
And Joel said it, and he said, sustainability for agriculture is making it through the next year.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I mean, to me, I've always been averse to these media publicized buzzwords.
Yep.
Sustainability to me is a stupid thing to talk about in farming in terms of us having to prove that we're sustainable. I mean, if we're not sustainable, I mean, we're portrayed as raping the ground, the water, our people, the environment, everything. But I want to be here next year.
Yep.
I want to be employed. I love what I do. What we do, we feed the world. You know, it's a rewarding career. And if I'm not operating sustainably, I'm going to be out of business. So it's dumb that we have to prove ourselves as wanting to be sustainable.
And not to mention, but piggybacking on what Joel was just saying though, when you look at inputs, I mean, because I'll hear, you hear about water use, and it's like I don't want to use any more water than I have to because I have to pay for it.
Same with fertilities and chemical everything.
I was going to say I was going into the next pesticides, fertilizer, you name it.
You talk about the runoff in the Midwest. You can't afford to put on more than what the crop needs. And why would you?
And you can't afford to have it disappear.
Exactly. I mean, yes, events happen where, you get a huge rain that it hasn't had a chance to incorporate, that it runs off. We don't have that much because we're basically micro-fertilizing. We're fertilizing in the root zone. But we're not going to put on 500 units of nitrogen if the crop needs 100. because we can't afford to.
Yep.
Like that's the whole thing of looking at us, and maybe that happened 50 years ago. Where this nitrate pollution that we're recognizing as being an issue in California came from, but there is nothing that escapes the root zone of an almond tree because we can't afford to put on more than what it needs.
And Tanner, I know we need to wrap up, but I think of this when it comes to farm management. I have people ask me, and they're like, "Well, I want somebody that's going to take care of the ground, good land stewardship." I said, "Well, farmers are always going to take care of the ground because if they don't put enough fertilizer on or they don't take care of it, their crops aren't going to be good." It's catch-20,
Not to mention, and if you do anything to harm it, like Joel said, you want to stay in business. If you do anything to harm your land, you're detrimenting what you can do next year, 5 years, 10
down the road.
years.
So
You can do everything you
everybody's
can.
going to have good land stewardship if they're building a crop to help that. But back to his question, what he asked is, what do you guys do to learn something? What is the best way that you've learned something for any of our listeners?
I would say experts and experience. So if you want to learn something new, go talk to the experts. So like going back, we talked pump automation. I'll use that as an example. WiseCon, we wanted to automate pumps. Went and talked to the experts. WiseCon is the experts in it. So we go and talk to them. Hey, can you tell us about how your system works, operational, how it works? They walk through it all. They're the experts.
Okay.
And then I go talk to a grower who's using it. You go find somebody who's already doing it, and it's really trying not to recreate the wheel, but there's a lot of knowledge sharing. So like if Joel and I will talk on stuff, I'll talk to other people. You go find somebody at that point. Then, hey, are you using WiseCon? Yes, I am. Tell me about it. Can we meet? Can you show me your platform? We actually did that with WiseCon. We met up with the grower, and we spent an hour and walked through the platform. So I got it from the experts. I got it from the experience.
Yep.
And it was a good fit for us, and we went for it.
Tanner, I love it. That's why we started the podcast, to share what works with everybody else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So for me, it's similar, but it's to me it's relationships.
Okay.
Our business is a lifestyle. You develop relationships over the years. I think in some of the corporate farming that's been lost a little bit over the years. Relationships with your John Deere dealer, your relationships with your chemical salesman, your relationships with your water district, your relationships with your neighbors. We're all in this together. We're all trying to survive. Using those relationships when it's time to learn. Using your relationships when others want to learn from you. We're in competition with each other, but we're not. We're all trying to make it through. But to me, it's developing and building the relationships to when you have questions, you have people that you can go to, that you find the right person. But you built that relationship. Walking around here, I've been coming here for 25 years. It's I come here more to just see people than it is see stuff.
Okay.
And that's to me where our business is people based. Yes, it's equipment. Yes, it's tractors. Yes, it's technology. But essentially, it's the people is what makes it work. And if I need to find something out, I'm going to utilize the relationships of I'm going to call somebody that I know might know somebody, and that's just developing that network. Having those relationships and friendships that you just have as being in this fight together.
That's what the podcast has become.
Yep.
We get a lot of email requests, and we can't get to every topic that is suggested, but they look at us as a great way to have somebody unbiasedly go do an interview with a company to find out what their product is, how it works, and is it going to be a good one. We just don't have time to do all of that.
Yep.
But it's the same way. They put us on that trusted plateau and say,
you
please
guys,
go learn.
what happened?
I
Who
know.
trusted
I
you?
know. Crazy shirt now.
Corey maybe, but not yet.
So speaking of relationships, for you guys, I don't know if you're on social media. We're all over social media, and a lot of our friends are watching on social media. Do you guys do social media? And do you mind sharing, if somebody wants to do almonds and had a question, would you share a way to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Like out loud right now?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Joel, you go first.
At Ackernecht24 on Instagram.
Okay, perfect.
Say that again.
Jackerne 24.
Gotcha.
And I do more limited on the social media, but yeah, I do a little bit of Instagram. But there are a lot of people. The Almond Doctors one. If you want to learn more about the cultural
Your
practices.
sister-in-law.
My Almond Girl Jenny.
Girl Jenny.
You have you have these other ones, like I mentioned, Almond Alliance, Almond Board. There's so many resources. You can look up different processors.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of information out there in the almond market.
Yep.
That's good. Well, it's been a good show. I don't know if this
Awesome.
is what you expected it to be, but I'm glad that we learned what we did about almond growing. And there are a lot of similar challenges, no matter where you're farming at.
I mean, that's the thing. Farming's farming. The commodity, you can switch a commodity, but the concept's the same.
Yep.
Like that's, we're all just trying to be profitable, be stewards of the land, the people, all that stuff. So
I love it. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for taking your
thanks
time
for
out of
having
your day.
us.
Hopefully you now got time to go find the people you came here to see.
Time for a ribeye sandwich.
Yeah,
we
they
had
were
one
good.
yesterday.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was really good.
Enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Enjoy
absolutely.
California.
Hey, thank you. And thank you again.
Hey,
Yep.
thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Until next
Appreciate
time,
it.
we'll see you.